The dirt beneath Elena Garrett's knees had long since stopped feeling uncomfortable, and that terrified her more than anything else about the last 3 months of her life. She knelt outside the Golden Horse Saloon in Agua Caliente, Arizona Territory, her hands cupped together, her eyes cast downward as men stumbled past her with whiskey on their breath and judgment in their eyes. It was September of 1882, and the desert heat still clung to the evening air like a suffocating blanket, making her threadbare dress stick to her skin in ways that made her feel even more exposed than she already was. "Please," she whispered to a man in a fine suit who walked past without so much as a glance. "Please, sir, just a few cents for food." The man spat tobacco juice near her feet and continued into the saloon. Elena flinched but didn't move. She couldn't. Where else would she go? The boarding house had thrown her out 2 weeks ago when she couldn't pay rent. The church had offered prayers but little else, their coffers already stretched thin with widows from the latest Apache raid and miners injured in cave-ins. Elena had tried to find work. God knows she had tried, but respectable establishments wouldn't hire a woman alone without references, and the less respectable ones wanted things from her she wasn't yet desperate enough to give. Not yet, anyway. But she could feel that line getting thinner every day. "You should move along," a voice said from above her, and Elena looked up to see Martha Pennington, the banker's wife, holding her skirts away from Elena as if poverty were contagious. "You're giving our town a bad reputation. What would visitors think?" "I'm sorry," Elena said automatically, though she wasn't sure what she was apologizing for. For being orphaned when cholera took her parents. For having the stage she was traveling on get robbed, leaving her stranded in this town with nothing. For being a woman alone in a world that seemed designed to punish that particular crime. Martha sniffed and swept past, and Elena felt something inside her crack just a little bit more. She was 22 years old, and she was kneeling in the dirt begging for coins. Her mother had taught her to read, to sew, to play the piano. Her father had owned a small but successful dry goods store in Missouri. She had been educated, refined, destined for a good marriage and a comfortable life. And now she was this. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple that would have been beautiful if Elena had the energy to appreciate beauty anymore. She was so hungry. She'd had half a stale biscuit that morning, given to her by a kind Chinese laundress who probably had little enough herself. Her stomach felt like it was eating itself from the inside out. "Evening, miss," another voice said, and this one made her look up quickly because it was different from the others. It wasn't mocking or disgusted or pitying. It was just polite, like she was a person worth speaking to properly. The man standing before her was tall, with broad shoulders that spoke of hard physical work and sun-weathered skin that suggested he spent most of his time outdoors. He wore a clean but well-worn shirt, dark trousers held up by suspenders, and a wide-brimmed hat that cast his face in shadow. When he removed the hat, she saw he had brown hair that needed a cut and eyes the color of the sky just after dawn, somewhere between blue and gray. He looked to be in his late 20s, maybe 30 at most. "Sir," Elena managed, her voice hoarse from disuse and dehydration. He crouched down so he was at her level, and she noticed he didn't grimace at the dirt or seem concerned about his clean trousers. Up close, she could see a scar running along his jawline and calluses on his hands that spoke of rope work and hard labor. "How long have you been out here?" he asked. Elena wasn't sure how to answer that. Today, this week, the month since her life had fallen apart. "A while," she settled on. "You eat today." The question was so direct, so lacking in judgment that Elena felt tears prick her eyes. She blinked them back furiously. She'd promised herself she wouldn't cry anymore. Tears didn't fill your stomach or put a roof over your head. "I'm fine," she lied. The man studied her for a long moment, and Elena had the uncomfortable feeling that he could see right through her. "What's your name, Elena?" "Elena Garrett." "I'm Samuel Owens," he said, offering his hand as if she were a lady at a social function and not a beggar in the dirt. Elena stared at his hand for a moment before hesitantly placing her own in it. His palm was warm and rough, and he shook her hand with a firm respect that made something in her chest ache. "You got family, Miss Garrett, friends? Anyone in this town looking out for you?" Elena shook her head. "No, sir. I was passing through when I had some bad luck. I've been trying to find work, but—" She trailed off, not wanting to explain how many doors had been slammed in her face, how many store owners had looked at her worn dress and assumed the worst, how impossible it was to get hired anywhere respectable without references or connections. Samuel was quiet for a moment, his gray-blue eyes thoughtful. Then he said something that would change Elena's life forever. "I run a cattle ranch about 5 miles outside town, 3,000 acres, 200 head of cattle, half a dozen horses. It's good land, but it's a lot for one man to manage alone. I need help with the house, with cooking and mending and keeping things organized. I can offer you room and board, a fair wage, and the respect you deserve. If you want the job, it's yours." Elena stared at him, sure she'd misheard. Men didn't just offer jobs to women begging in the street. "I don't understand." "I'm offering you work," Samuel said simply. "Honest work with honest pay. You'd have your own room, 3 meals a day, and your dignity. All I ask in return is that you help keep my household running. I'm not home much during the day, out with the cattle and horses, and I'm tired of living in a house that's falling apart around me because I don't have time to keep it up proper. Seems like we could help each other." "You don't know me," Elena said, her mind racing. "I could be anyone. I could steal from you or worse." Samuel smiled, and it softened his weathered features considerably. "Could be, but I'm a pretty good judge of character, and I don't think you will. Besides, I'm betting you're a better person down on your luck than half the folks in this town who have got their luck still intact. What do you say, Miss Garrett? You want to come work for me?" Elena's mind was spinning. It could be a trap. He could be one of those men who preyed on desperate women. But when she looked into his eyes, she didn't see cruelty or deception. She saw something that looked almost like kindness, a quality she'd nearly forgotten existed in the world. And what were her options, really? Stay here and keep begging until winter came and killed her. Try to make it to another town with no money and no horse. Accept the job at the saloon that the owner kept hinting at, the one that would require her to do more than just serve drinks. "Yes," she heard herself say. "Yes, I'll take the job." Samuel's smile widened and he stood, offering her his hand again. This time he pulled her to her feet, and Elena swayed slightly as the blood rushed from her head. She couldn't remember the last time she'd stood up quickly. "When did you last eat a real meal?" Samuel asked, steadying her with a hand on her elbow. "I'm not sure," Elena admitted. "Right, first things first then. Let's get some food in you and then we'll head out to the ranch." "I can't afford," Elena started, but Samuel waved her off. "You work for me now. I take care of my people. Come on." He guided her down the street, and Elena was acutely aware of how she must look next to him. He was clean and respectable, and she was dirty and bedraggled. People stared as they passed, and she heard whispers following in their wake. Samuel seemed not to notice or care. They went to a small restaurant run by a Mexican family, and Samuel ordered in Spanish, which surprised Elena. When the food came, it was more than she'd seen in weeks. Beans and rice, fresh tortillas, roasted chicken, and vegetables cooked with peppers and spices. Elena tried to eat slowly, to maintain some dignity, but her body had other ideas. She was halfway through the plate before she realized Samuel hadn't touched his own food, just watched her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "I'm sorry," she said, mortified. "I'm eating like an animal." "You're eating like someone who's hungry," Samuel corrected gently. "There's no shame in that. Take your time. We've got nowhere to be until you're done." Elena forced herself to slow down, though every instinct screamed at her to keep shoveling food into her mouth while it was available. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Really?" Samuel leaned back in his chair, considering the question. "My mother died when I was 14, he said finally. "Fever took her quick. My father was a hard man, got harder after she passed. He died when I was 21, left me the ranch. I've been running it alone for 8 years now, and I've done all right for myself, but it's a lonely life. I go into town and I see people like Martha Pennington, so full of judgment and short on compassion, and I think about how different my mother was. She always said you judge the quality of a person by how they treat those who can do nothing for them." He met Elena's eyes. "You were down on your luck through no fault of your own, and every person in this town walked past you like you were invisible. That didn't sit right with me. I figured if I could help, I should, and like I said, I do genuinely need help with the house, so it works out for both of us." Elena felt tears threatening again. "Thank you," she whispered. "Eat," Samuel said. "You can thank me by doing good work and getting your strength back." When Elena finally finished eating, feeling fuller than she had in months, Samuel paid the bill and they walked to the general store. It was late, nearly closing time, but the owner stayed open while Samuel bought supplies. To Elena's surprise, he also bought fabric for dresses, a nightgown, new boots, and various other necessities. "You can't work in what you're wearing," he explained when Elena protested. "Consider it an advance on your wages. You can pay me back over time if it makes you feel better." The owner, Mr. Henderson, gave Elena a disapproving look. "You sure about this, Samuel? Taking in strays ain't always the wisest choice." "Miss Garrett isn't a stray," Samuel said, his voice taking on a harder edge. "She's my new housekeeper. I'd appreciate it if you'd treat her with the respect that position deserves." Mr. Henderson grumbled but wrapped up the purchases without further comment. They collected Samuel's horse from the livery, a beautiful chestnut mare named Rosie, and Samuel helped Elena up behind him. "Hold on," he instructed, and Elena hesitantly wrapped her arms around his waist. She could feel the solid warmth of him through his shirt, the rise and fall of his breathing. It was strange to be so close to a man, strange but not uncomfortable. The ride to the ranch took about 40 minutes in the gathering darkness. Samuel pointed out landmarks along the way, a distinctive rock formation, a creek that ran year-round, the boundary markers of his property. The ranch house appeared as the last light was fading from the sky, a sturdy wood structure with a wide porch and a barn nearby. It wasn't grand, but it looked solid and well-maintained from the outside. Inside was another story. Samuel lit lamps, revealing a space that clearly belonged to a man living alone. Dishes were piled in the sink, dust coated most surfaces, and Elena could see places where things needed mending or repairs that had been put off too long. "I know it's a mess," Samuel said, sounding almost embarrassed. "Like I said, I'm not here much except to sleep. I've been focusing on the outdoor work and letting the house go. Your room is through here." He led her to a small bedroom off the main living area. It had a real bed with a mattress, a dresser, a washstand, and a window with curtains. To Elena, who had been sleeping in alleys and under storefronts for weeks, it looked like a palace. "There's a pump out back for water," Samuel continued. "Privy is behind the house. I'll show you everything properly in the morning, but for tonight, just settle in and rest. There's a lock on your door," he added, meeting her eyes directly. "Use it. "You're safe here, Miss Garrett, but I want you to feel safe. That's important to me." The fact that he said it out loud, acknowledged the vulnerability of her position, actually made Elena feel safer than if he'd ignored it. "Thank you," she said. Samuel nodded and left, closing the door behind him. Elena listened to his footsteps fade as he went to what she assumed was his own bedroom on the other side of the house. For a long moment she just stood there, half convinced this was a dream and she'd wake up back on the street, but the room didn't disappear. The bed was still there. She walked over and sat on it carefully, testing the mattress. It was soft, real. She lay back, still fully clothed, and stared at the ceiling. She had a job. She had a room. She had eaten a full meal. For the first time in months, Elena Garrett went to sleep without crying. She woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the sound of roosters crowing. For a moment she was disoriented, unable to remember where she was. Then it all came flooding back. The saloon, Samuel, the ranch. Elena sat up and realized she'd slept in her filthy dress. She looked at the packages Samuel had bought last night and carefully opened them. The nightgown was simple but made of soft cotton. The dress fabric was practical calico in a deep blue. There were also undergarments, stockings, and a pair of sturdy boots. She used the water in the pitcher on the washstand to clean herself as best she could, scrubbing away weeks of grime and street dirt. It wasn't a proper bath, but it was better than nothing. She put on the new undergarments and stockings, both of which fit well enough. Samuel must have guessed at her sizes. The nightgown would work as a temporary dress until she could sew proper clothes from the fabric. When she emerged from her room, she found Samuel in the kitchen, frying eggs on a cast-iron stove. He looked up when she entered and smiled. "Morning. Hope you slept well." "Better than I have in a long time," Elena admitted. "Good. Breakfast is almost ready. After we eat, I'll show you around properly, explain what needs doing. Sound fair? Very fair." They ate together, and Elena found herself studying Samuel in the morning light. He had a good face, she decided. Strong features, honest eyes, and a mouth that looked like it smiled easily, though there were also lines around his eyes that suggested he'd known his share of hardship. He caught her looking and raised an eyebrow questioningly. "Sorry," Elena said quickly. "I'm just still trying to understand why you did this. Told you last night. I needed help and you needed work. Most men wouldn't have seen it that way. They would have seen a woman alone as an opportunity for something else." Samuel's expression grew serious. "I'm not most men, Miss Garrett. My mother raised me better than that, and my own conscience wouldn't let me sleep at night if I took advantage of someone in a vulnerable position. You work for me, and that means I owe you fair treatment, fair wages, and respect. That's how employment should work, even if it doesn't always." After breakfast, Samuel gave her a proper tour. The house was larger than it had seemed last night, with the main living area, kitchen, Samuel's bedroom on one side, her room on the other, and a small room that Samuel used as an office for ranch business. There was also a root cellar for storage and a loft that was mostly empty. "I'll be straight with you about expectations," Samuel said as they stood in the kitchen. "I'm not looking for perfection. I know the house is in rough shape, and it'll take time to get it right. What I need is someone to keep things basically clean, cook meals so I'm not living on jerky and hardtack, mend clothes when they need it, and help with preserving food when harvest time comes. I pay $30 a month plus room and board. That fair?" Elena's eyes widened. $30 was more than most housekeepers made, especially ones who also received room and board. "That's very generous. It's fair for the work. You'll earn it, trust me. Ranch life isn't easy and there's always something that needs doing. But you set your own pace. If you need a break, take it. If you're sick, rest. I'm not a slave driver and I don't believe in working people into the ground. Deal. Elena stuck out her hand the way he had the night before. Deal. Samuel shook her hand, his grip firm and warm, and Elena felt something flutter in her chest that she quickly suppressed. He was her employer. This was a job. She couldn't afford to feel anything else. Over the next few weeks, Elena threw herself into work with an intensity born of gratitude and determination to prove her worth. She started with the kitchen, scrubbing every surface until it gleamed. Then she moved to the living areas, washing windows, beating dust from curtains, scrubbing floors. She organized Samuel's office, which had been a disaster of scattered papers and lost receipts. She mended his clothes, which had been patched and repatched so many times they barely held together. Samuel, for his part, was true to his word. He treated her with unfailing respect, never entering her room without knocking, always saying please and thank you, and complimenting her work without being condescending. He worked long hours with the cattle and horses, usually leaving before dawn and returning at sunset, dusty and exhausted. But he always took time to talk to her at meals, asking about her day and her needs. "I need to buy thread and some other sewing supplies," Elena said one evening over dinner, "and we're running low on flour and sugar." "Make a list," Samuel said. "I'll take you into town on Saturday. You can pick out what you need." Saturday came, and they rode into Agua Caliente together. Elena had sewn herself 2 proper dresses by then, and with regular meals she'd lost the gaunt, desperate look she'd had before. She held her head high as they walked through town, though she was aware of the stares and whispers. "Let them talk," Samuel murmured as they passed a group of women who whispered behind their hands. "You've got nothing to be ashamed of." At the general store, Mr. Henderson was more polite than he'd been before, probably because Samuel's business was valuable. Elena selected her supplies carefully, aware of the cost of everything. Samuel added several items she hadn't listed, including a good pair of scissors and a sewing kit with multiple needles. "You'll need proper tools if you're going to be sewing regularly," he explained. They were loading supplies into the wagon when a man approached. He was well dressed, with slicked back hair and a mustache waxed into points. Everything about him screamed money and self-importance. "Samuel," the man said, his tone overly familiar. "Heard you picked up a new housekeeper. This her?" "Miss Elena Garrett," Samuel said, his voice carefully neutral. "Elena, this is Theodore Walsh. He owns the ranch neighboring mine to the east." "Charmed," Theodore said, looking Elena up and down in a way that made her skin crawl. "You certainly cleaned up nice. Wouldn't have recognized you from when you were begging outside the saloon." Elena felt her face burn with humiliation, but Samuel stepped between them, his posture suddenly protective. "Miss Garrett is my employee and deserves your respect, Walsh. I'd appreciate it if you'd speak to her accordingly." Theodore held up his hands in mock surrender. "No offense meant, Samuel. Just making an observation. Though I've got to say, taking in a woman alone, having her live in your house, people are bound to talk. Might not be good for either of your reputations." "Then people should find more productive ways to spend their time," Samuel said coldly. "Miss Garrett's character is beyond reproach, and anyone who suggests otherwise will answer to me. We done here?" Theodore's smile didn't reach his eyes. "We're done. For now, you take care, Samuel, Miss Garrett." He tipped his hat mockingly and walked away. Elena was shaking. "I'm sorry. I didn't think about how it would look, me living there. I don't want to cause problems for you." "You're not causing problems," Samuel said firmly. "Walsh is just sore because I wouldn't sell him my water rights last year, and he's looking for ways to needle me. Ignore him. Anyone with sense knows there's nothing improper going on." But Elena couldn't quite ignore it. Over the next few weeks, she became increasingly aware of the looks they got in town, the way conversations stopped when they approached. She heard the word mistress whispered more than once, saw the judgment in people's eyes. It came to a head one Sunday when Elena decided to attend church. She'd been avoiding it, not wanting to face the congregation, but she missed the comfort of worship. She dressed in her best dress, pinned her dark hair up neatly, and walked into town. The church was small, with wooden pews and a simple altar. Elena slipped into a back pew, hoping to go unnoticed, but within minutes she felt eyes on her. Martha Pennington turned around from several rows ahead and gave her a disapproving look. After the service, as Elena tried to leave quickly, Martha blocked her path. "You have some nerve showing your face here," Martha said, her voice low but venomous. "Living in sin with Samuel Owens and then coming to God's house like nothing's wrong." "I'm not living in sin," Elena said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I'm Mr. Owens' housekeeper, that's all." "Is that what you're calling it? Everyone knows what really goes on in that house." "You should be ashamed of yourself, using your body to get off the streets." Elena felt like she'd been slapped. Before she could respond, another voice cut in. "That's enough, Martha." Samuel stood behind her, dressed in clean clothes, his hair neatly combed. Elena hadn't even known he attended this church. He looked at Martha with an expression of such cold anger that the older woman actually took a step back. "Miss Garrett is my housekeeper," Samuel said clearly, his voice carrying in the quiet church. "She works hard, maintains my home, and conducts herself with more grace and dignity than you've shown in this entire conversation. If you have a problem with my hiring practices, take it up with me, not her. And if I hear you've been spreading rumors about her character, we'll have a very different kind of conversation. Are we clear?" Martha's face turned red. "Well, I never know. I don't imagine you have," Samuel said. "Tried treating people with basic human decency, I mean. Come on, Elena." "We're leaving." He offered her his arm, and Elena took it gratefully, her legs feeling like water. They walked out of the church together while everyone stared. Outside, Elena pulled away, suddenly angry, not at Samuel but at everything, at the unfairness of it all. "Why?" she demanded. "Why does it matter so much to people? I'm working honestly. I'm not hurting anyone. Why can't they just leave me alone?" "Because people are small-minded," Samuel said. "Because it's easier to judge than to help. Because someone like Martha Pennington needs to feel superior to someone, and you're an easy target. Maybe I should leave, find work somewhere else. I don't want to ruin your reputation." "You're not ruining anything, and you're not leaving." Samuel's voice was firm. "You want to know what would ruin my reputation? Letting people like Martha bully me into throwing out a good person because of gossip and lies. I won't do it, Elena. You've earned your place at my ranch, and I'll be damned if I let small-town prejudice drive you away." Elena looked at him, this man who had shown her more kindness than anyone in her life, and felt something shift inside her. It wasn't just gratitude anymore. It was something deeper, more complicated. "Thank you," she said quietly. "Don't thank me for doing what's right. Come on, let's go home." Home. The word resonated in Elena's chest as they rode back to the ranch. Somewhere along the way it had become home, not just a place she worked, but a place where she belonged. That evening, as Elena prepared dinner, Samuel came in from the barn looking thoughtful. "I've been thinking," he said. "About what Martha said, about the situation." Elena's heart sank. Was he changing his mind about employing her? "Yes. People are going to talk no matter what we do," Samuel continued, "but there might be a way to make it harder for them to criticize. I could hire a second hand for the ranch, someone who'd live in the bunkhouse. Having another person around might take some of the pressure off, make things look more proper." "Would that help?" Elena asked. "Might. And truthfully, I could use another hand anyway." Roundup is coming and it's too much for one man. I was thinking of asking around, seeing if there's a young guy looking for work, someone honest and hardworking." "All right," Elena said. "If you think it's best." Over the next week, Samuel made inquiries in town. The response surprised both of them. Apparently, despite the gossip, or perhaps because of it, people were interested in Samuel's ranch and his mysterious housekeeper. Several young men applied for the position, most of them clearly hoping to get a closer look at the scandal. Samuel finally hired a young man named Daniel Morris, who was 19 and had grown up on a ranch before his family lost everything in a bad drought. He was polite, hardworking, and most importantly, treated Elena with genuine respect. "Madam," he said when Samuel introduced them, "pleased to meet you. My mother was a housekeeper for a big ranch up north before she married my father. It's honest, hard work, and anyone who says otherwise is a fool." Elena liked him immediately. Having Daniel around did change the dynamic a bit. He took on many of the outdoor chores that had been Samuel's alone, which meant Samuel was around the house more. Elena found herself having longer conversations with him, learning more about his life and sharing more of her own. "I grew up in Missouri," she told him one evening as they sat on the porch after dinner watching the sunset. Daniel was in the bunkhouse, giving them privacy. "My father had a store, nothing fancy, but we did well enough. I had a good childhood, lots of books and music. My mother taught me piano." "You play?" Samuel asked, interested. "I did. It's been years, though. I haven't seen a piano since I left home." "What brought you out west?" Elena had known this question would come eventually. She took a deep breath. "I was engaged to a man named Robert. He was a clerk in my father's store. We were supposed to be married in the spring of 1881, but my parents got sick that winter, cholera. They both died within a week of each other." "I'm sorry," Samuel said quietly. "Robert helped with the funeral arrangements. He was kind, supportive, or so I thought. But after the funeral, when we were settling the estate, I found out my father had debts I didn't know about. The store, the house, everything had to be sold to pay them off. There was almost nothing left. Robert broke off the engagement 2 days later, said he couldn't marry a woman without means." Elena's voice was bitter, even after all this time. "I had an aunt in California, my mother's sister. She wrote and said I could come live with her, so I used the last of my money to buy a stagecoach ticket. But we got robbed outside of Agua Caliente. They took everything, left us stranded. The other passengers had family or money to wire for help. I had nothing. I wired my aunt, but she never responded. I found out later she died the month before. I just didn't know." "So you got stuck here," Samuel said. "I tried to find work. I really did. But without references, without connections, no one would hire me. I stayed in a boarding house at first, doing odd jobs to pay for my room. Laundry, mending, anything I could get. But it wasn't enough. I fell behind on rent, got evicted. After that, it was the street. And you know the rest." Samuel was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Robert was an idiot." Elena looked at him in surprise. "To let you go because of money," Samuel clarified. "If he really loved you, he would have figured it out. You're smart, hardworking, capable. Together, you two could have built something." But he was too short-sighted to see that. His loss. Elena felt warmth spread through her chest. "That's kind of you to say." "It's not kind, it's true. You're one of the strongest people I've ever met, Elena. You've been through hell and you kept going. That takes courage." Elena looked at Samuel in the fading light and realized with a start that she was falling in love with him. It wasn't just gratitude, wasn't just respect or admiration. It was real, deep, complicated love. The kind that made her heart race when he smiled, made her conscious of every moment he was near, made her want to know everything about him. The realization terrified her. She was his employee. They had a professional relationship. She couldn't risk that by developing feelings. She couldn't lose this job, this home, this security. Not again. But feelings, once acknowledged, are hard to ignore. Over the following months, Elena became increasingly aware of Samuel, the way he pushed his hair back when he was thinking, the gentleness with which he handled the horses, the patience he showed when teaching Daniel a new skill, the way his whole face changed when he laughed, which he did more often now than when she'd first arrived. She also noticed things about herself. How much extra care she took with her appearance on days when she knew Samuel would be around the house. How disappointed she felt on the rare evenings when he ate dinner quickly and went back outside to work. How much she treasured their conversations on the porch, talking about everything and nothing as the desert stars emerged overhead. It was late November, nearly 3 months since Elena had arrived, when things shifted again. Winter was coming to the Arizona territory, which meant cooler temperatures but not the harsh snows of the north. Elena had been preserving food, preparing the house for the cooler months, and sewing warmer clothes for herself and the men. One evening, Samuel came in from the range with a nasty cut on his arm. A steer had panicked, knocked him into a broken fence rail. The wound was deep and bleeding heavily. "It's nothing," Samuel insisted, but Elena immediately went into action. She'd learned basic medical care from her mother and had been the one to nurse her parents during their illness. The memory hurt, but the skills were still there. "Sit," she commanded, pushing Samuel into a chair. She grabbed clean cloths, hot water, and the bottle of whiskey Samuel kept for medicinal purposes. "This is going to hurt." "I've had worse," Samuel said, but he winced when she cleaned the wound with whiskey. Elena worked efficiently, cleaning the cut, checking for splinters or debris, then binding it tightly with clean bandages. Her hands were steady, but she was acutely aware of the warmth of Samuel's skin under her fingers, the way his breath hitched when she wrapped the bandage around his muscular forearm. "You're good at this," Samuel said, watching her face as she worked. "My mother taught me. She said every woman should know basic nursing. She taught you well. Thank you, Elena." Their eyes met, and Elena felt something electric pass between them. Samuel's good hand came up slowly, as if giving her time to move away, and brushed a strand of hair that had fallen from her bun back behind her ear. His fingers lingered against her cheek for just a moment. "Elena," he said softly, and the way he said her name made her breath catch. Then Daniel called from outside, asking about feed for the horses, and the moment shattered. Samuel stood quickly, thanked her again, and went to help Daniel. Elena stood alone in the kitchen, her heart pounding, her cheek still warm where he'd touched her. That night, she lay in bed unable to sleep. What was happening between them? Was she imagining the connection, seeing what she wanted to see? Or did Samuel feel something too? And if he did, what then? Could anything real develop from such an unequal beginning? Would people ever see her as anything other than the beggar he'd taken in? The questions haunted her, but she had no answers. December brought cooler weather and preparations for Christmas. Elena hadn't celebrated the holiday properly since her parents died, had spent last Christmas alone and starving, trying not to think about previous years with family and warmth and plenty. But Samuel announced they'd celebrate this year, all 3 of them, a proper Christmas dinner. "I know it's not easy," he said when Elena protested it was too much trouble. "Holidays when you've lost people. But that's exactly why we should celebrate, to honor their memory and remind ourselves that life goes on, that there's still good in the world." So Elena threw herself into preparations. She baked pies and bread, made preserves, planned a feast with the supplies Samuel brought from town. Daniel contributed a wild turkey he'd shot, and Samuel brought home a small pine tree they decorated with strings of popcorn and berries. Christmas Eve was crisp and clear. They ate dinner together, the three of them around the table, and it felt like family. Daniel told stories about his childhood, making them all laugh with his impressions of his various siblings. Samuel shared memories of holidays with his mother, his voice warm with affection. "She made the best gingerbread," he said. "I haven't had any that tasted as good since." "I could try to make some," Elena offered, "if you tell me what you remember about it." Samuel's smile was soft. "I'd like that." After dinner, Daniel excused himself to the bunkhouse, claiming he wanted to turn in early. Elena suspected he was giving them privacy, and she was grateful and nervous in equal measure. She and Samuel sat by the fire, the remains of their Christmas celebration around them, and talked. Really talked, about hopes and dreams and fears. Samuel spoke about his plans for the ranch, wanting to build it into something that could support multiple families, create jobs in the community. Elena talked about her love of music and learning, how she'd once dreamed of being a teacher. "You could still do that," Samuel said. "Teach, I mean. Maybe start a small school out here. God knows the ranch families need one. Kids currently have to ride miles to get any education." "You really think I could?" "I know you could. You're smart and patient and good with people. You'd be a wonderful teacher." Elena felt tears prick her eyes at his faith in her. "No one's believed in me like you do, not even my parents, really. They loved me, but they expected me to marry, be a wife and mother. They didn't understand when I wanted more." "There's nothing wrong with wanting more, and there's nothing wrong with wanting marriage and family either. You can have both, Elena. You can have everything." The way he said it, the intensity in his eyes made Elena's breath catch. "Samuel," she started, not sure what she was going to say. He leaned forward, his hand covering hers on the armrest. "Elena, I need to tell you something. These past months, having you here, getting to know you, He paused, seeming to struggle for words. "You're not just my housekeeper, you haven't been for a while now. You're my friend, and I value that. But lately, I've been feeling something more, something I probably shouldn't feel given our situation." Elena's heart was racing. "What do you mean?" "I mean I care about you. Not as an employee, as a woman. I think about you all the time. I look forward to our conversations more than anything else in my day. I find myself making excuses to be near you. And I know it's not right, not fair to you given the power imbalance between us, but I can't keep pretending I don't feel what I feel." Elena stared at him, her mind reeling. "You have feelings for me. I'm falling in love with you, Elena. I might have already fallen." Samuel's voice was raw with honesty. "And I know that probably scares you, and I understand if you want to leave, find work somewhere else. I'll give you the best references, enough money to get settled somewhere new. I won't keep you here if my feelings make you uncomfortable." "Uncomfortable," Elena repeated, then laughed, a slightly hysterical sound. "Samuel, I've been falling in love with you since the day you crouched down in the dirt and treated me like a person worth helping. Every day since has just made it worse. I think about you constantly. I care about your happiness more than my own. When you're gone all day, I miss you. When you're here, I'm aware of exactly where you are every moment. If you're in love, then so am I, completely and hopelessly." Samuel's eyes widened. "You love me." "Of course I love you," Elena said, feeling lighter for having said it. "You saved my life and then gave me back my dignity. You treated me with respect when everyone else saw me as nothing. You make me laugh and challenge me to think and believe in possibilities I'd given up on. How could I not love you?" Samuel stood, pulling her up with him, his hands warm and sure on her arms. "Elena Garrett, may I kiss you?" The fact that he asked, that he still gave her the choice even after their confessions, made Elena love him even more. "Yes," she whispered. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, both of them testing this new territory. But then Samuel's arms wrapped around her, pulling her close, and Elena melted into him, her hands coming up to tangle in his hair. The kiss deepened, becoming something urgent and real, months of repressed feeling pouring out. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Samuel rested his forehead against hers. "I want to do this right," he said. "Court you properly, make sure everyone knows my intentions are honorable. Will you let me court you, Elena? With the end goal of marriage, if you'll have me." Elena's eyes filled with tears, happy ones this time. "You want to marry me? I want to marry you. I want to make you my wife, make this official, build a life together. I want everything with you, Elena, but only if you want it too." "I want it," Elena said, her voice choked with emotion. "I want all of it. Yes, Samuel. Yes." He kissed her again, and Elena felt like her heart might burst from happiness. After everything she'd been through, all the loss and pain and desperation, she'd found this. Love, real love, with a good man who saw her for who she really was. They told Daniel the next morning over breakfast. He grinned widely and said, "About time. I was wondering how long you two were going to dance around each other." "You knew?" Elena asked, surprised. "Madam, everyone with eyes could see how you felt about each other." "I'm just glad you finally figured it out." The town's reaction was more mixed. When Samuel and Elena went into Agua Caliente together that weekend, Samuel proudly announced they were courting and intended to marry. Some people were happy for them, particularly the men who respected Samuel and saw Elena's transformation from desperate beggar to confident woman. But others, particularly women like Martha Pennington, were scandalized. "You're actually going to marry her?" Martha demanded when she cornered Samuel outside the general store. "The woman who was begging in the streets, who lived in your house unmarried for months. You're going to make her your wife." "I am," Samuel said firmly, Elena standing proudly beside him. "And I'd appreciate it if you'd address your concerns to both of us, not just me. Elena is my equal in this relationship, Martha, not some possession I'm acquiring. But her past is one of survival and courage," Samuel interrupted. "She was alone in the world through no fault of her own, and she did what she had to do to stay alive. There's no shame in that. The only shame is how people like you treated her, walked past her suffering without a shred of compassion. Elena is twice the woman you'll ever be, and I'm honored she agreed to marry me." Martha sputtered, but Samuel was done. He took Elena's hand and they walked away, heads high. "Does it bother you?" Elena asked later as they drove back to the ranch. "What people say?" "Not even a little bit," Samuel said. "I know who you are, Elena. You know who I am. That's all that matters. Everyone else can think what they want." They were married in February of 1883, 4 months after Samuel had found Elena begging outside the saloon. The ceremony was small, held at the ranch with Daniel as a witness and the circuit judge presiding. Elena wore a simple white dress she'd sewn herself, and Samuel wore his best suit. When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Samuel kissed her with a tenderness that made Elena's eyes fill with tears. "I love you, Mrs. Owens," he whispered against her lips. "I love you too," Elena whispered back. Their wedding night was nervous and sweet. Samuel was gentle, patient, making sure Elena was comfortable every step of the way. They made love slowly in the bedroom that had been his alone but was now theirs, learning each other's bodies, cementing their commitment in the most intimate way possible. Afterward, lying in Samuel's arms, Elena felt a sense of peace she'd never experienced before. She was home, truly home, with a man who loved her and a future that looked bright. "What are you thinking about?" Samuel asked, running his fingers through her loose hair. "How different my life is from a year ago, how impossible this would have seemed then." Are you happy? Elena lifted her head to look at him. I'm happier than I ever imagined possible. You gave me everything, Samuel. Not just a home and security, but dignity, respect, love. You saw me when I was invisible to everyone else. You were never invisible to me, Samuel said. From the moment I saw you outside that saloon, you were the only thing I could see. The first year of their marriage was an adjustment, but a happy one. Elena continued managing the household, but now as wife rather than employee. Samuel had insisted on hiring a woman from town to help with the heavier cleaning, wanting Elena to have time for herself and the teaching she'd talked about. By summer, Elena had started a small school at the ranch, teaching the children of neighboring families 3 times a week. She loved it, found joy in watching children's faces light up when they mastered a new skill. Samuel built her a small schoolhouse near the main house, complete with desks and a chalkboard, and Elena filled it with books purchased from her teacher's salary, which the families paid collectively. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Samuel worked the ranch with Daniel and 2 other hands he'd hired as the operation expanded. Elena taught, managed the household, and started a garden. They had dinner together every night, talked on the porch in the evenings, made love in their bed with a passion that only deepened over time. In the fall of 1883, Elena realized she was pregnant. She told Samuel one evening after dinner, nervous despite knowing he'd be happy. "You're sure?" Samuel asked, his eyes wide. "I'm sure. The signs are all there. I think the baby will come in late spring." Samuel let out a whoop of joy and picked her up, spinning her around before setting her down carefully. "We're having a baby. Elena, we're having a baby. Are you happy?" Elena asked, laughing at his enthusiasm. "Happy? I'm ecstatic. You're going to be such a wonderful mother. And I promise I'll be the best father I can be. Our child will never doubt they're loved." Samuel was true to his word. As Elena's pregnancy progressed, he was attentive and supportive, taking on extra chores so she could rest, bringing her special treats from town, talking to her growing belly when he thought she was asleep. The baby, a boy they named James after Samuel's father, came in May of 1884 after a long but uncomplicated labor. Samuel held his son with tears streaming down his face, his big hands impossibly gentle. "He's perfect," Samuel whispered. "You're perfect. Thank you, Elena. Thank you for this, for everything." Elena, exhausted but glowing, smiled. "We made him together. He's part of both of us." James was a healthy, happy baby who grew into a curious toddler. Elena reduced her teaching to focus on him, but the school continued with a young woman from town taking over most of the classes. Elena still taught reading twice a week, unwilling to give it up completely. Life was full and rich. The ranch prospered under Samuel's management. Daniel got married to a girl from town, and Samuel helped him buy a small piece of land where they started their own homestead. The community slowly came to accept Elena, particularly as they saw her success as a teacher and her dedication to her family. Even Martha Pennington eventually unbent, particularly after her own daughter was caught in a scandal, and Elena was one of the few women who showed the girl kindness. "You're a better woman than I am," Martha admitted grudgingly. "I judged you harshly and I was wrong. I apologize." Elena accepted the apology with grace, knowing how hard it must have been for Martha to admit fault. In 1887, Elena gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Mary, after Samuel's mother. She had Elena's dark hair and Samuel's gray-blue eyes, and Samuel absolutely doted on her. James, now 3, was fascinated by his baby sister and wanted to help with everything. The children grew up surrounded by love, learning to ride horses, helping with ranch work, attending Elena's school. James inherited Samuel's way with animals and ranching. Mary had Elena's love of learning and teaching. They were good kids, happy and secure in ways their parents had never been at their ages. As the years passed, the ranch continued to grow. Samuel and Elena became pillars of the community, known for their fairness and generosity. They hired fairly, paid well, and helped neighbors in need. The school Elena had started expanded to serve dozens of children. The territory was changing, becoming more settled, more civilized. On Christmas Eve of 1895, Samuel and Elena sat on their porch as they had so many times before, watching their now grown children inside with friends and cousins. James, at 11, was tall and strong, already helping seriously with ranch work. Mary, at 8, was reading to the younger children with patience and enthusiasm. "You ever think about that night?" Samuel asked, his arm around Elena's shoulders. "The night we met, sometimes," Elena admitted. "It feels like another lifetime, like it happened to different people." "You were begging outside the saloon," Samuel said quietly. "And I offered you a job. Best decision I ever made." Elena turned to look at her husband, this man who had saved her life and then built a life with her. They'd been together 13 years now, and she loved him more with each passing day. "You gave me more than a job, Samuel. You gave me dignity, hope, love, everything that makes life worth living." "You gave me just as much," Samuel said. "I was alone, going through the motions. You brought light and purpose and joy. You made my house a home. You gave me a family. I'm the lucky one, Elena." "I think we're both lucky," Elena said, snuggling into his side. "We found each other when we both needed it most. We built something real from nothing but faith and hard work and love." "And we're not done building yet," Samuel said. "We've got years ahead of us, watching our kids grow up, maybe meeting grandchildren someday. Growing old together on this ranch we built." Elena smiled, thinking of all those years stretching ahead. Decades more of this life, this love, this partnership. "I can't wait," she said. As they sat together watching the stars emerge over the Arizona desert, Elena reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From the desperate, starving woman begging for coins to a respected teacher, mother, and rancher's wife. From nothing to everything. All because one man had seen her when she was invisible, had offered dignity when others offered only judgment. But it was more than just Samuel's kindness. It was the strength Elena had found in herself, the determination to keep going even when everything seemed hopeless. It was the courage to accept help, to trust again after loss, to open her heart to love despite the risk of more pain. In the years that followed, the Owens family continued to flourish. James eventually took over running the ranch, expanding it further with his father's guidance. Mary became a teacher herself, taking over Elena's school and later founding schools in other communities. Both children married well, chose partners they loved rather than partners who were expedient, a freedom their parents had fought to give them. Samuel and Elena grew old together on the ranch they'd built. Samuel's hair turned silver, and Elena's dark locks developed threads of gray. They moved slower, needed more rest, but their love never dimmed. They still talked on the porch in the evenings, still held hands like newlyweds, still looked at each other with the wonder of people who knew how lucky they were. In 1910, they celebrated their 27th anniversary surrounded by children, grandchildren, and friends. The house Elena had once cleaned as an employee now rang with the laughter of 3 generations. The land Samuel had worked alone now supported multiple families. The school Elena had started now had 3 teachers and educated children from miles around. "You know what the best part is?" Samuel said to Elena that night as they prepared for bed, their bodies tired but hearts full. "What's that?" "We didn't just survive, Elena. We thrived. We built something lasting. We created a legacy of love and generosity and fairness. That matters. It does matter, Elena agreed. And it all started because you saw a woman begging outside a saloon and decided to offer help instead of judgment. No, Samuel corrected gently. It started because a brave woman kept surviving even when survival seemed impossible. I just recognized what was already there. Your strength, your worth, your beautiful heart. I was just smart enough to want you in my life. Elena kissed him, a soft press of lips that held decades of love and partnership. We were both smart, and we were both brave enough to take a chance on each other. They lived many more years, Samuel passing peacefully in his sleep in 1918 at the age of 66, Elena following 2 years later at 60, her children and grandchildren surrounding her bed. Their story became family legend, told and retold to each new generation. The story of how a rancher gave a begging woman dignity and a home, and how that single act of kindness grew into a love story that spanned decades. The ranch remained in the family for generations, a testament to what two people could build when they combined faith, hard work, and love. Elena's school evolved and expanded, eventually becoming part of the Arizona public school system, but never forgetting its roots in one woman's dream of education for all children. And sometimes, on quiet desert evenings, the Owens descendants swore they could feel the presence of their ancestors, Samuel and Elena, still watching over the land they loved, still holding hands, still together even beyond death. Because some loves are strong enough to transcend even the final boundary, and the love between the rancher and the woman he'd saved from desperation was exactly that strong. Their story wasn't just about rescue or charity. It was about recognizing worth when others saw only worthlessness. About offering dignity when society offered only judgment. About building partnership based on mutual respect and genuine love. About two people who met at their respective low points and lifted each other up, not just to survival, but to a life of meaning and joy. Elena Garrett Owens had been begging outside a saloon, invisible to most of the world, when Samuel Owens crouched down in the dirt and saw her. Really saw her, not as a beggar or a charity case or an opportunity, but as a person deserving of respect and help. That moment of recognition, of one human seeing the inherent dignity in another, changed both their lives forever. And in the end, that was the true heart of their story. Not just that Samuel saved Elena, but that Elena saved Samuel right back. He'd been alone, isolated by loss and hard work, going through the motions of life without truly living. Elena brought warmth, joy, purpose, and love. She made his house a home, his loneliness into companionship, his existence into a life worth celebrating. They saved each other. They built together. They loved completely. And their legacy, tangible in the land and family they left behind but also intangible in the lesson their lives taught, endured long after they were gone. The lesson that kindness matters, that dignity matters, that seeing and honoring the humanity in others can change the world, one person at a time. That was the story of Samuel and Elena Owens, the rancher and the woman he gave dignity and a home in one offer, and it was a story worth remembering.